Trump, who corrupted the highest office in America, must be prosecuted. And, pretty straightforward about this. I start out with Honoré de Balzac, who said, behind every great fortune, there's a great crime. And, I point out that Trump obviously made his fortune with a great crime, as his niece, Mary Trump, is suing him right now for basically stealing much of his family's money, making himself rich and impoverishing his relatives. But frankly, I think all of Donald Trump's crimes need to concern us. And sadly, I'm not seeing any evidence. Now, I realize Merrick Garland is going to be giving a statement at some point today about protecting elections. I doubt he's going to wander into this territory, and if there's a Q&A session, I doubt he'll even give a straight answer to whether or not Trump is being investigated, but we'll see. And I'll keep an eye on things and let you know if anything comes out of that. But, the bottom line is that we tend in America not to prosecute the rich and powerful. It's a very straightforward thing. I mean, think about it. Name one billionaire or somebody worth over $100 million other than Jeffrey Epstein who has been seriously prosecuted in the last couple of decades. It just doesn't happen anymore. And even Epstein, he got convicted, and the prosecutor down in Florida and the jailer down in Florida, you can go back to, having teenage girls come hang out at you at your compound. And I mean, it was crazy. I mean, he's been permanently shut up, and I'm convinced that there's some nasty stuff there. But I mean, he's literally the only example that I can think of. Maybe there's another one that you know of. But that's just where we're at. And there is a certain immunity available to really wealthy people. They can hire the very best lawyers, and many of them have politicians deeply in debt to them, and sometimes judges. But France just convicted Sarkozy, their president, of bribery. And Israel has brought charges against Netanyahu for multiple criminal events that could land him years in prison. It's one of the reasons that people speculate that he's pulling a Donald Trump right now. It's fraud. It's the most fraudulent election. It's because he's trying to hang out of power because it's the thing that keeps him out of jail. But neither of those countries have collapsed because their president or prime minister was prosecuted, or in the case of France, convicted. I mean, this is also true of South Korea. It's also true of Taiwan. These countries did not collapse. In fact, accountability is a pretty important thing. Donald Trump brought open fascists into the White House. People like Mike Flynn, Paul Manafort, a long-time career as a grifter, as a mobbed-up criminal, tied into Russian-aligned, Ukrainian and other countries in that former Soviet orbit, oligarchs and billionaires. And I mean, he was doing the dirty work for politicians who literally killed their opponents. That was Paul Manafort. Trump brought him in as campaign manager. And, of course, Michael Flynn. And then you got grifters and con artists like Betsy DeVos and Elaine Chao and Wilbur Ross, all who have been not accused of, as in a court of law, but accused of in the media of committing crimes or at least corruption while they're in the White House. And then, of course, there's Bill Barr. I mean, back in 1992, Bill Clinton won that election in November. This was the tail end of the Reagan-Bush era. Reagan had been president from 1980. He won the 1980 election. I'll keep it to round numbers. He won the 1980 election, and then he got reelected in 84, and then his vice president, George Herbert Walker Bush, won the election in 88, and so was president until 1992. And in December, in fact, the week of Christmas, 1992, George Herbert Walker Bush had made, actually several months earlier, had made Bill Barr his attorney general. And Lawrence Walsh and his little crew of investigators were closing in on George Herbert Walker Bush for the Iran-Contra scandal. This is the one where the president of Iran, Abdullah, I can't even pronounce his first name, but Bani Sadr was his last name. He wrote a book about this, actually, which I didn't even know until like a couple months ago. I bought a copy of it online. My story to tell, my turn to tell the story, something like that. Abul Hassan Bani Sadr. And he told the story to the Christian Science Monitor, which is where it's easiest to Google, that when he was president in September of 1992, this is leading up to the November 1992 election between George Herbert, well, excuse me, he was president in September of 1980, and this was leading up to the November 1980 election between Jimmy Carter and Ronald Reagan. And the hostages had been held for almost a year at that point. And he ran earlier that year on a platform of freeing the hostages. More than 90% of Iran wanted the hostages freed. They just, it was not a popular thing, what these so-called students did. And so he goes to Ayatollah Khomeini once he becomes president. He goes to Ayatollah Khomeini and says, let's release the hostages. And Khomeini says, we can't do that. We cut a deal with the Reagan campaign to hold them until after the election. And sure enough, the hostages were freed to the minute. As Ronald Reagan, on January 20th, 1981, as Ronald Reagan put his hand on the Bible to be sworn in as president, that was to the minute the moment that the hostages were freed, keeping the deal. So anyhow, Lawrence Walsh, the special prosecutor, was closing in on George Herbert Walker Bush's role in this. Reagan at this point is like, in full-blown dementia, Alzheimer's. Can't testify, can't do anything. And they're going after Bush, and he had subpoenaed Bush's diary, and Bush is like, how do I stop this investigation, Bill Barr? And Bill Barr said, just pardon everybody. He won't have any leverage over anybody anymore. He can't get anybody to testify. You're in the clear. And so, Bush did that. And the headline across the top of the New York Times, Bush pardons 6 in Iran affair, averting a Weinberger trial, prosecutor assails cover-up. Yeah. Bill Barr covered up the crimes of Reagan and Bush. And I would argue those crimes were actually treason. I'm not sure we were actually at war with Iran, so maybe it doesn't quite qualify as treason, but it's damn close. And, that's Bill Barr. And then you got Trump. The Mueller report, Trump is committing his own crimes. The Mueller report lays out 10 specific examples of obstruction of justice, criminal felony actions by Donald Trump. There's 10 of them. Now, they made the point that under Justice Department guidelines, he can't be prosecuted until he leaves office. But hey, here's the roadmap once he's gone. Is Merrick Garland pursuing this? To the best of our knowledge, no. Why the hell not? He took bribes from foreign governments. He passed top secret intelligence along to the Russians that led to burning an Israeli spy. That was in his first week in office. He was sending campaign information to the Russians during the 2016 campaign so that they could carefully calibrate their interference on Facebook and other social media. This guy, Donald Trump, was a criminal before he came into the White House and was a criminal during the 4 years that he was in the White House. Very, very straightforward. So now, America has more people in prison than any other country in the world, both on an actual numbers basis and obviously on a per capita basis. Why is that? Well, because we've had, 100 years of tough on crime politicians, which really meant tough on black people politicians, but that's a whole nother rant. But tough on crime politicians who said, if you let criminals get away with crimes, you just empower them. And you also encourage other wannabe criminals to do the same thing. And there actually is some truth to that. Obviously we have not put this thing into practice in any kind of reasonable way. But the point is, if Trump is allowed to get away with this, then when the next corrupt Republican comes along, say Rick Scott, before he became a politician, he made tens of millions, maybe over $100 million from this company that was convicted of the largest Medicare fraud in the history of the United States. And then he took that money and became the governor of Florida, and then he used his own money to become United States senator, and now he's going to be running for president in 2024. So he gets in the White House, and he's going to look around and go, oh, well, they never prosecuted Donald Trump. I guess I can do this stuff too. Trump directing the Justice Department to go after Eric Swalwell. I mean, in fact, Trump directing the Justice Department specifically to go after the heads of the Intelligence Committee, the head of the Intelligence Committee, and the guy who was leading his prosecution in the impeachment. And is anything being done about this? We'll see, but I think it is time that we hold this guy accountable. I mean, the Republicans are all about accountability, remember? Bill Clinton, oh, he got a BJ from Monica. We gotta impeach this guy. We gotta hold him accountable. And they did. Of course, he was a Democrat. Holding Republicans accountable? No, not so much. But here's the thing. If we don't hold Trump accountable soon, and Barr, and the other corrupt members of his cabinet, it's going to be too late. And a precedent will have been established to say, yeah, Josh Hawley, Rick Scott, Ted Cruz, whoever is the next Republican president, do whatever the hell you want. No consequences, nothing to worry about. It's all good. This is nuts.